Now let's bring in our U.S. Report regular, former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, thanks for joining us tonight. Now, just quickly, I want to get your thoughts, because we haven't had a chance to speak on Trump's arrest this week and the politics of how this is going to play out. His popularity is surging, but is that just kind of a sugar hit around all the news?
Well, there's a little bit of that, James. Keep in mind the sympathy for him is real. There's even some centrist Republicans, maybe some centrist Democrats, who are worried about the larger issue of the politicization of the government against its citizenry. And it's hard to make the case that this is anything but that. This looks like a political witch hunt. It's somebody who ran for office saying, look, if you elect me, I'll prosecute this particular person. And they followed through on that. So it's sort of a promises kept type of campaign that we're here. It's a political campaign that we're seeing. And there's folks who are ordinarily not going to support Donald Trump generally, but will come to his defense. Keep in mind, even the folks running against him, either announced or anticipated in the Republican primary, have been coming to his defense. I'm talking about Ron DeSantis, talking about Nikki Haley, talking about Mike Pence. They're all saying that Donald Trump is the victim here. So, yeah, Trump has got to bounce. Whether or not it's a sugar high, I don't know. But this concern about using the government against political enemies is not going away anytime soon. That's becoming part of the ordinary discussion in American politics.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, Mick, that whatever the result of these charges is, that is the most dangerous thing here because, you know, I mean, this is a country that's supposed to be all about the rule of law. And if you're putting essentially an opposition leader attempting to jail him, well, that's pretty off. But let's move on away from Trump because the polls also aren't doing that great for Joe Biden. They aren't in his favor at the moment. Just have a listen to this little breakdown from CNN.
His overall approval on some of the major issues of the day. And I think what's interesting here is the economy, 37% approval, immigration, 35%. He's underperforming his overall job approval on a slew of issues. Only on the environment, at 46% approval, does he actually overperform.
And Rasmussen has just reported that Trump in a head-to-head with Biden is at 47% to Biden at 40%. And DeSantis is also ahead 46 to 38. How worried would they be in the White House about all this right now?
They will be. They're especially worried about the economic numbers. Keep in mind, your numbers might be, you know, good or bad on the border. Nobody votes on the border in this country. They could be good or bad on the environment. Nobody votes on the environment in this country. It's the economy, stupid. It's what Bill Clinton said. He's one of the best politicians of the 20th century. He's absolutely right. So that number in the low 40s, upper 30s for the Biden, depending on the polls you look at, on the economy would really have the Democrats worried. Again, the pendulum, how many times have we said this? The pendulum is swinging back and forth. One week I'm on the show, it looks like absolutely that Joe Biden is going to be the Democrat nominee. And then the next week, maybe it's back in the camp of saying, let's find somebody else. In the last week or so, it's moved back towards let's find somebody else. We keep expecting Biden to make this announcement, this formal announcement that he's running for president. They've been teasing that now since the beginning of this year. We're through the end of the first quarter, and there's still no formal announcement. We're reading stories about Gavin Newsom making trips to New Hampshire and Iowa. So the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth, and right now the pendulum is swinging against Joe Biden.
So, Mick, if as time goes on you keep seeing that pendulum swinging back and forth, that means that there's continued unsettlement about the prospect of a Biden nomination and his chances. I mean, even if it's spending half the time in one side and half the time in the other, the overall picture suggests to me that there's a lot of disquiet. There would be a lot of disquiet within Democrat circles about whether or not this guy is really who they want to take to the general.
Well, keep in mind, one of the reasons he was able to win in 2020 was because of COVID. He legitimately was able not to campaign. The line about him running from his basement is actually not that far from being literally true. He didn't have to campaign. You focus on this show every single week. The more Joe Biden says, the more he says that's stupid. It comes back to sort of haunt him. The man is a gaffe machine. So the Democrats know that. They've got somebody who's going to be in his 80s. They've got somebody who's struggling on the economy. They've got somebody with a very unpopular and incapable vice president. You know, the list of reasons for the Democrats to replace Joe Biden are very long. On the other side of the ledger, you have, well, he did beat Donald Trump And this week, of course, it looks even more likely that Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. And that's all the Democrats really care about is how do they beat Trump? They don't care who's on their side of the ledger as long as Trump doesn't win.
And, well, just on their side of the ledger, we've also had news that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has filed paperwork to run in 2024 as a Democrat. Now, is this just a goofy sideline sort of candidacy, or does this indicate more sort of dramas on that side of politics?
Yeah, despite his last name, I mean, and despite his impressive family name, this is Robert Kennedy's, I think it's his grandson, the former senator, John Kennedy would be his great uncle. This is not a legitimate candidate for the Democrats. It's a little bit more legitimate than Marianne. I think her last name is Williamson, the faith hero or whatever that runs every couple of years. So clearly he's a Kennedy. Clearly he brings sort of a gravitas to the office or the race just because of his name. But this is not a mainstream sort of Democrat. When you and I sit here and talk about, who the list of possible Democrats are to run or to win if Joe Biden doesn't run, Robert Kennedy Jr. doesn't make the top 10 or the top 20. So, yeah, he's going to get some attention. He's going to end up getting a little bit of credibility because of his name, but he's not a legitimate challenger to Joe Biden.
Now, finally, in North Carolina, not South Carolina, sorry, but in North Carolina, a Democrat in the state government there has switched parties to give Republicans a veto-proof supermajority in the state house. Let's have a listen to what she had to say.
I noticed some pretty big changes in the Democratic Party right when I got here, and it was very disturbing. I caught a lot of flack over the fact that on my car and on various things I display the American flag, that I talk a lot about my importance and belief in my faith, and I've used Jesus several times when I've led our chamber in house prayer.
Now, beyond just the sort of internal politics of North Carolina, there is that what she's saying there, an indication that Democrats have a broader connection problem still with connecting to middle America and with values of patriotism, faith, and things that, would be called by Barack Obama, clinging to your guns and your God, and Hillary Clinton, a basket of deplorables.
Yeah, this is really quite interesting. And you're right to raise it on the show. I'm glad that you folks actually picked up on this because this is a really, really big story. This district actually that is referenced, this North Carolina district, is about 700 feet from my house. I know these folks. They live very close to me. So I know I have a sense for what's happening. And here's what's happening is that the Democrat Party, as a party, is going so far left on its LGBT, its wokeness, its can trans people compete in women's sports? Can men have babies? Those discussions are real within the Democrat Party. That's where the energy is within the Democrat Party. And more Democrats are starting to move. This one got a lot of attention because it moves the supermajority within this particular state legislature in North Carolina into a supermajority, which will have a big impact on legislation there. But that's not the story nationwide. The story nationwide is you're seeing more and more Democrats contemplating leaving their party and becoming Republicans. Kyrsten Sinema in the Senate has left the Democrat Party. Joe Manchin is talking about leaving the party. You're not hearing a lot about Republicans, leaving the party to become Democrats. Liz Cheney left the Republican Party because she doesn't like Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean that the principles of the party sort of make no sense to her anymore. You're going to start seeing more and more of this as the Democrat Party goes to the left. There's a Democrat member of Congress who lives in this same area. He's in Washington, the federal legislature, who called this an earthquake, and he's not wrong. We haven't seen this type of energy in this transition since Ronald Reagan became a Republican in the 1960s.
Fascinating take there. Mick Mulvaney, thank you so much for joining us, and best wishes for a happy Easter.